Hello. Um, I'm going to talk about the Chateau Disaster tapes by Jethro Tull, which can be found on the Nightcap compilation album, recent Nightcap compilation album. There was one before that, this, same title, same cover art. There's a nice bottle of, I don't know, Napoleon brandy or something on the front. And the one I had on vinyl, it had a few tracks from the Chateau Disaster tapes and lots of goodies, unreleased goodies to go with them. This one's quite a different two-disc set. The first disc is just the Chateau Disaster tapes, and I'll show you it. There, up to the top there, Chateau Disaster tapes. Okay. Just Chateau Disaster. It says Chateau Disaster. Now, the release of these full tapes, I bought this because the Sea of Tranquility video review mentioned them. Pete Pardo mentioned them, and he was very impressed. And so was I when I heard them. And I've listened to them about 4 times. Listened to the entire disc about 4 times. And I started thinking, well, this could have been an album in itself, a different album altogether. And with a bit of editing, it would not interfere at all with the Passion Play album, which followed these sessions. The band was rehearsing and writing for an album in France, the Chateau Disaster, in the Chateau Disaster, which was a place where other musicians had worked before, and it was a disaster for various reasons. And the tapes were binned, but luckily they were kept. And then they returned to England and wrote and recorded a Passion Play. Wrote, arranged, recorded Passion Play, which became a great prog favourite to this day, although it's a bit controversial as well for various reasons. Now, I thought, is this a repeat of the Chateau Disaster concept? And it is not. There's a complete conceptual shift between the two, which someone had the insight at the time to address by calling this album a Passion Play and not the Passion Play or just Passion Play, because it is just a Passion Play. It's not a version of the Chateau Disaster tapes, although people might think so, which I'll explain in a minute. But the Passion Play represents a concept album about a young man who dies in a car accident on the Fulham Road, which is in London, and I've walked down it many times. And he experiences various afterlife scenes, 2 or 3 acts. I think there are 3 acts, and involving his past deeds flashing before him, as it were, and experiences of heaven and hell and angels and the devil and presumably God. Though I can't remember whether God is mentioned as such, explicitly. And then at the end, he decides to return. Now, some people have interpreted this as reincarnation, but I think it's more likely that he experienced clinical death for a while and was brought back by CPR or whatever medical procedure, or his heart just started up again. His heart started up again. Anyway, that's the Passion Play concept. But the Chateau D'Isaster album, I'm calling it an album now, concept, is an entirely different play altogether. It's a play of the entire creation, especially focusing on humanity, of course, but with God as the director. And at the end, the last scene, which is a track, which I think it's called No Rehearsal. There's no rehearsal. That is the Day of Judgment, which reminds me of Black Sabbath's War Pigs song, Day of Judgment, God is Calling. And the ceiling crashes in at the very end on all the actors and all the rest, consigning them to punishment. So now, in order to make this into an album, because there is music on this that's repeated on the slightly different forms, but it's repeated on the Passion Play album. Not a lot of music. Now, the first few tracks are two classical pieces, not established pieces by the famous composers, but written by presumably Ian Anderson. Does it say who it's written by? No, not explicitly. The First Post and Animalay are both beautiful musical tracks, classical pieces. Now, the next track, Tiger Tune, I would expunge, because I wouldn't have it on the album, because it's just a rather lame rendering of the prelude music from the Passion Play album. But it's called Tiger Tune on this, and it's not very good, and it's the same music. So I'd expunge that. Also, similarly, Law of the Bungle 1 is another playing of that same music, and the lyrics don't do anything, add anything different to the song before it, Look at the Animals. So I'd also expunge that. And then there's the song Only Solitaire, which is a short acoustic guitar vocal song, which really belongs on the War Child album, which I also have here. It's another great album. It's not a concept album. There it is. And I'll also mention that again in a minute. Excuse me. So those three tracks, all I do is remove those three tracks. Now, the tracks Critic Oblique and Post Last do have music in them that is featured on the Passion Play album, but they're sufficiently different to those. The improvisation and the improvisation, they're played differently, and the improvisations are entirely different to the improvisations on the Passion Play album. They go into kind of dramatic, heavy rock zones, and unlike the electric jazz that's found on the Passion Play album. And it's very fine heavy prog motion of music that you find on Critique Oblique and Post Last. A bit like, it's as fine as Black Sabbath, or more recently Cathedral, and even more recently Tyr, or TYR, the Scandinavian band, who I find also to be very fine musicians, and the Cathedral guys as well. Excuse me, computer's wobbling again. There. Now, excuse me, that's the wrong thing. Right. The the concept of this, with the animals representing, to an extent, parts of evolution, yes, but also responsible, the animals' evolutionary form, responsible, various habits of animals, responsible for the many motivations and some of the passions of mankind, the negative sides of mankind in his acting, in his play. That concept occurs in some of the songs of War Child, but as a theme, not even a theme, a subtext really in some of the songs of War Child. And so, but that's perfectly acceptable. It doesn't interfere with the validity or the integrity of the War Child album. That this concept, which is a huge concept on the Chateau D'Isaster song cycle, reoccurs. You get reoccurring ideas for various logical reasons in from one musical piece to another. Anyway, one album, obviously one album to another. Where's the thing? Oh, it is. Sorry. Very difficult. This very difficult subject matter to talk about. Now, the three last tracks on the Chateau D'Isaster album, I'm calling it an album now, Scenario, Audition, and No Rehearsal, are superb, unique songs that I've never heard anything before, except that I've heard the songs before, but I've never heard anything like them anywhere else. And they explain the concept very well, especially Scenario. And it's interesting that the role of God in here is mostly of him being kind of indifferent, and then at one point towards the end, he gets so sick of the antics of mankind that he leaves, or disappears. So there you have it. My study of the Chateau D'Isaster tapes. So I would keep, for an album, I would keep First Post, Animalie, Look at the Animals, Love the Bungle Part 2, Left Right, which is a great heavy rocker of a song, Critique Oblique, Post Last, Scenario, Audition, and No Rehearsal. You have to behave yourself, lad, or the ceiling will come crashing in. Now, I was trying to think of a title for the album. What title, if I may be presumptuous, what title would I give the album? It's no use calling it the Chateau D'Isaster tapes anymore. The band would probably like to embellish it somewhat, but I wouldn't. The arrangements and the performance are already superb. Anyway, the title of the album. I thought The Passion Play, but no, that's not right. Or Another Passion Play. Well, I suppose it is. But I think a good thematic name for it would be Evolution. But would that get the message across? The message isn't allegorical. There's an allegorical message on a passion play. It's a Christian allegory. That's something of a subtext within that, but I won't go into that. But on this, I think the theme is just more cynical. It has to do with the folly, really, of mankind. So, who knows? what it would be called. Think about it yourselves. If you agree with me, I recommend that you listen to these tapes. There's a great sequence of music and song, and it has structure. It has a gentle beginning, and it gets more and more heavy. I think, broadly speaking, gets more and more heavy as the tracks follow one another until the very end, of course. But and as I was saying before, the composed improvisations are great and completely different to the Passion Play or the War Child improvisations, for that matter. And Martin Barr shines as much as ever on this. I think he was underplayed on some albums, including a Passion Play, especially on the Stephen Wilson remix, who Stephen Wilson expunged some of his playing for some reason. I thought it was really, really good. That's why I prefer the remastered 2006 remastered edition to his remix. Though I usually like his remixes more than the original. In this case, I don't. Anyway, so I'll leave it at that. And happy listening to everybody. This is Sherwin Green saying bye-bye. God bless.